I have to say I'm making the assertion that this proportionality problem is fundamental. It is predictable from the outset, and it is inherent to the design. Now, your question on motive, it is very difficult to speculate.
What are the problems with the Electoral Amendment Bill? I posed this question to Michael Atkins in a recent episode of my podcast, Solutions with David Ansara. What follows is a short extract from our longer conversation. If you would like to watch the full discussion with Michael Atkins, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description below. Enjoy. In your view, is this current bill consistent with that principle of proportionality? And if not, why not?
Right. The National Assembly has become more proportional. In essence, if I can describe the proportionality principle and problem that we're faced with, we can then see how the bill falls short in critical areas.
Okay.
Essentially, if you have a single ballot and you have individuals and parties on that ballot, what happens is you allocate seats to individuals, to your independent candidates, but obviously they may only occupy a single seat, even if they win enough votes that would ordinarily merit a few seats. And what happens is any seats earned by individuals get allocated to those individuals, and their seats and votes are removed from the calculations before the proportional calculations for parties are carried out. And if I may take a slight sideways movement, the way proportional allocations work, you have so many votes, 17.4 million votes, 400 seats. That gives you an effective quota per seat, 44,000 votes per seat. And when seats are allocated, you say, well, who's got 44,000 votes or more? Give them a seat for each 44,000 votes. That is the quota. But then after all the seats are allocated according to the quotas, there are a certain number of seats left over, and each party has a certain number of votes left over. Those are the remainders. So what happens in 2019, we had 48 parties and 13 of the 400 seats weren't allocated by quotas because the remainders of those 48 parties effectively added up to 13 seats worth of votes. So you allocate seats first on quota and then on remainder. I won't get into the particulars now. But when you have individuals on that list, you have to have a stage where you allocate seats to individuals, those independents. You then effectively remove those seats that are awarded and the votes that go towards individuals. Now, the way these numbers break down, automatically, if you take the collective independents as though they were a party, but they're not, all of the independents together, all of the votes they have, and any seats they win. Now, when you remove those successful independent candidates, their votes and seats, they are going to have more votes, relatively speaking, than the number of seats that they are awarded. So you get a prominent person, a celebrity might get 2 or 3 seats worth of votes. When you take those out of the calculation, you're taking 3 votes out of the calculation, and you're taking 1 seat. So the votes and seats for independents are out of proportion. When you remove them from the calculations, what's left is also out of proportion. And what it means is the collective share of seats for parties is a little higher than their share of the votes. So essentially, parties are going to earn a higher proportion of seats than the vote share that they enjoy. And the way the calculations work, the largest party is always going to get the biggest gain. So roughly speaking, but it's slightly biased above this, if there are excess seats that the independents don't take up, independents might get 5% of the votes, which would ordinarily be 20 seats. But they may only get 6 seats. So there is a bonus being given back to everybody else. And that bonus is being shared out firstly to the largest party and thereafter among the others. Some of the smaller parties might not get any increase in seats from that bonus.
Why would
So
that necessarily go to the largest party, those excess votes?
When you take the seats and votes for independent candidates out of the calculation, you drop the quota. The quota, another way of thinking about it, is the cost of each seat that has already been awarded. So if you drop the quota, each seat for parties costs fewer votes. If a seat costs fewer votes, the largest party gets a big bonus, because if the ANC has close to 200 seats, each seat becoming cheaper adds up to several seats as a bonus. If you were to take, say, 4% of all the seats given back to share among the parties, a 4% bump for the ANC is close to 8 or 9 seats at that level if they're around 50% of the vote. Whereas a 4% bump for a small party actually probably wouldn't change the number of seats that they get allocated. So those extra seats that go to the parties, because independents inherently cannot win collectively as many seats as the votes they earn, those extra seats will go in greater proportion to the largest party. And then we have this one large party in the National Assembly, and then less than half at the moment, and then is the DA as second, and then almost half of them is the EFF. So if you have 8 or 10 bonus seats, as it were, awarded to the parties, the ANC is going to get 5 or 6 of those seats, very simply. And this is after the improvements to the bill have been made. Even the second ballot that's been allocated ameliorates the problem to some extent, but not fully.
There's a mental model called Hanlon's razor, which states that you shouldn't attribute to malice that which can be explained by incompetence. Where do you think this bill falls on that spectrum? Do you think that this is some nefarious plot by the ANC to covertly grow its share of the parliamentary seats? Or do you think that this is just a kind of a muddle through without consideration to the second order effects?
Speculation is always dangerous. Given the timing and given the fact that it took 9 months, more or less, for the Ministerial Advisory Committee to be constituted and start meeting, by the time this was being done and the minister was making choices, he had very little option left. The minister was also warned immediately after the Concourt judgment in 2020 that if they wanted a full-blown constituency system, effectively that had to be in place by the end of 2021. And we were nowhere near ready at that point to make a decision. So by default, it's landed up like this. So on the minister's part, he took the assurances of the experts who were on his panel that this was a viable system. Now, the people who put forward this proposal, bearing in mind there was no public submission to this extent, and there is no precedent anywhere in the world for this system. But the 3 people who proposed this in that Ministerial Advisory Committee were Norman du Plessis, former Deputy CEO of the IEC, but also one of the architects of the entire electoral system during the 1990s. Accompanied by Mike Sutcliffe, former head of the Municipal Demarcation Board, and Pansy Tlakula, former chair of the IEC. One could not, on paper, have hoped to assemble a more qualified and expert panel of people to advise on an electoral system. And I have to say, I'm making the assertion that this proportionality problem is fundamental. It is predictable from the outset, and it is inherent to the design. Now, your question on motive, it is very difficult to speculate. I would say that I don't use the word incompetence, but maybe lack of care, lack of attention to detail is as damning an indictment as would be malice in this situation. To my mind, there are no easy explanations other than here's a quick, convenient way, but let's not apply our minds too much to the details.
Thanks for watching. If you would like to check out the full interview with Michael Atkins, you can do so by clicking here. You can also see more long-form conversations from our other channel that's linked over here. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, take care.